Guys, every year ESPN releases one list that always gets hype, controversy, and NFL fans talking. It doesn't rank the best players in the league, but instead, it tries to determine what each player would actually be worth in a trade. Well, the latest trade value rankings have just dropped, and several New York Giants stars made the list. But after looking through some of these values, it's hard not to feel like ESPN seriously missed the mark. Some of the Giants' biggest stars were valued in ways that just don't seem to match reality. So, let's break down ESPN's latest trade value rankings and talk about why they may have gotten the Giants completely wrong. What's up, Big Blue? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Giants. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So, before we even get into the individual players, it's worth pointing out how this whole exercise works in the first place. This isn't just some random writer throwing out numbers for fun. It's an actual attempt to figure out what it would realistically take for another team to pry a player away, factoring in age, position value, contract situation, and recent production. And normally, I don't mind these lists. Some years, they actually nail it. But this year, looking at how the Giants players got slotted compared to guys on other rosters around the league, something just feels a little inconsistent, and that's really what we're going to dig into today. Alright, so let's start with the guy ESPN says is worth the most, and honestly, this is the one part of the list I actually agree with. Abdul Carter got tagged as worth 2 first-round picks, and look, I get why. His rookie numbers, only 4 sacks, don't exactly jump off the page, but if you actually watch the tape, the pressure and the hurries were there all season. The production is coming, guys. This is a guy who put up a 12-sack, 23.5 tackle for loss season at Penn State before he even got to the league. That kind of pedigree doesn't just disappear because his rookie sack total looked underwhelming on paper. So yeah, 2 first-round picks sounds about right to me. Maybe even a little light, honestly, considering what he's capable of doing to a quarterback once he cleans up the run defense side of his game. Think about it this way. Teams don't usually get to walk away with a former number 3 overall pick who's already flashing pass rush ability at this level for anything less than a premium price. And I don't think 2 first-rounders is even close to overpaying if we're being real about it. Now here's where things start to get a little questionable for me. Right behind Carter, ESPN grouped Arvell Reese and Andrew Thomas together, saying both are worth 1 first-round pick and more. And I want to talk about Thomas first because, honestly, this is the one that bothers me the most on the whole list. You're telling me a 27-year-old left tackle, arguably the best in the entire league at that spot, is only worth 1 first-rounder and a little extra. Come on. Thomas plays the second most important position on the field, period. And, yeah, I know what the argument is here, health. He's only played 1 full, complete season over the last 5 years, and I get why that scares people off in a trade. But let's flip the way we even talk about this. It's not that the Giants have to pay Andrew Thomas, it's that the Giants get to pay Andrew Thomas. Having a 27-year-old top 5 left tackle on your roster isn't a burden, it's a luxury. Most teams in this league would trade 3 of their own guys just to have that problem. Think about how many teams around this league are still searching year after year for a true franchise left tackle guys who can't find one answer to protect their quarterback's blind side. And here the Giants have had one of the very best doing it for years already. That's not something you just hand away for a single pick with a little extra attached. If anything, injury history should make teams value continuity even more, because when Thomas is on the field, there's genuinely no drop-off in play, and that's rare no matter what position you're talking about. Now, sliding over to Arvell Reese, I actually think this one is a little fair, but I still think he's being undersold just a touch. Coming into the league as one of the more explosive young edge and linebacker hybrids in this draft class, and putting him in that same tier as a guy dealing with injury concerns like Thomas feels a bit off to me. If Reese stays healthy and keeps developing the way people expect 1 first-round pick, and more starts to look like a bargain pretty quickly. This is a guy who brings versatility that a lot of teams simply don't have on their roster. Someone who can line up in multiple spots and disrupt the game plan in more ways than one. Give him a full offseason and a real role, and I think this valuation ages about as well as anything on this whole list. Okay, now let's get into the one that's going to get people talking the most, and that's Jaxson Dart. ESPN has him valued at just 1 first-round pick. You're telling me if a team called up right now offering a single first-rounder, should the Giants even think about it? No shot. I'm not doing that deal, and honestly, I don't think most Giants fans would either. Look, Dart flashed real starting caliber traits as a rookie, and a lot of the concerns people bring up, like the health stuff, feel more like an easy narrative than an actual argument. Every quarterback in this league takes hits. Every quarterback deals with some kind of injury scare at some point. That's not a reason to knock his trade value down to just 1 pick. What people tend to forget is he barely got to play alongside his top 2 offensive weapons for most of that small sample size. You add in a full season with his top tackle and his top receiver actually on the field with him, and that number changes fast. If this kid turns into the guy a lot of us think he can be, we're talking about a franchise quarterback. And franchise quarterbacks simply are not 1 first-rounder players. Not even close. Look around the league at what it actually costs to acquire a proven, established starting quarterback in a trade, and you're talking multiple first-round picks, sometimes even more. So, valuing a rookie who already showed flashes of that ceiling at just 1 pick feels like it's judging him off a small, incomplete stretch of football rather than the actual trajectory he's on. Sticking with that tier for a second, ESPN also slotted Francis Mauigoa in at one first-round pick, and honestly, that one's a little easier to understand. He's still young, still building his body of work, and hasn't had the chance yet to really show what he can be over a full season, so I don't have as such issue there. Give him time, and that number's probably going to climb. Offensive linemen especially tend to take a little longer to fully develop. So judging him this early in his career makes a lot more sense than doing the same thing to a guy like Thomas, who's already proven himself over and over again. Now here's another name that got left off the list entirely, and it honestly surprised me a bit, Malik Nabers. Last year, he was being talked about as a 2 first-round pick type of receiver, and rightfully so. The guy looked like a legit top 10 talent at his position. This year, he's missing from the rankings altogether, and the reasoning makes sense on the surface. The ACL and meniscus injury he suffered last season is a real concern, especially with how unpredictable recovery timelines can be for that kind of injury. It's tough to justify handing over a first-round pick for a guy who might not even be full speed to start the year. But let's be honest, when Nabers is healthy, he's a top 10 wide receiver in this league, and some would argue he's closer to top 5. The talent hasn't gone anywhere. The medical risk is just clouding the picture right now. And that's exactly why this stuff is so tricky to rank in the first place, because you're not just grading the player, you're grading the recovery timeline, the medical reports, and how confident a front office feels about betting on a guy coming off a major injury. But if you strip all of that away and just look at pure talent on tape before the injury, this is still one of the most dynamic receivers in the entire league. And then there's the omission that really has me scratching my head, Brian Burns. This guy just put up 16.5 sacks, second most in the entire NFL, and somehow he's nowhere on this list. How does a guy who was basically robbed away from Carolina for what ended up being a steal of a deal not get recognized as a first-round pick caliber player? We already saw Dexter Lawrence get moved for a 10th overall pick, and I'll say it plainly, Burns is playing at a higher level right now than Lawrence was at the time of that trade. If any team calls the Giants asking about Burns, they better be bringing serious draft capital, because leaving him off this list entirely just doesn't add up. You look around this league and count how many teams have a legitimate double-digit sack, top-tier pass rusher already locked in on their roster, and that number is smaller than people think. Burns isn't just a good player having a nice season, he's putting up numbers that rank near the very top of the entire league at his position, and somehow that gets completely skipped over on a list that's supposed to be measuring exactly this kind of production. So, look, at the end of the day, is anyone actually expecting the Giants to trade away any of these guys anytime soon? No, not really. But that's kind of the fun of these exercises every year, seeing where the outside world places the value of your own roster compared to how you see it as a fan who watches every single snap. And when I look at this list, I see a front office sitting on a young quarterback who's being undervalued, a left tackle who's being treated like a risk instead of a luxury, a receiver who got skipped over because of one bad break, and an edge rusher who somehow didn't even make the cut despite one of the best pass rushing seasons in the league last year. It really does make you wonder how much these rankings are based on pure talent versus just recent narratives and headlines. At the end of the day, tape doesn't lie, and when you actually go back and watch what these guys did on the field, the value on this roster is a lot higher than one outside list wants to give it credit for. If you ask me, ESPN's got some serious homework to do before they revisit this list again. Now, is anyone actually expecting the Giants to trade away any of these guys anytime soon? No, not really. But when I look at this list, I see a young quarterback being undervalued, a left tackle treated like a risk instead of a luxury, a receiver skipped over because of one bad break, and an edge rusher who somehow didn't even make the cut. Tape doesn't lie, guys, and this roster's worth a lot more than one outside list wants to give it credit for. If you ask me, ESPN's got some serious homework to do before they revisit this list again.